Hello and welcome to Why Wasn't It Better? I'm your host, Patrick Darms.
I'm your co-host, Anton Paras.
We are joined today by a very special first-time guest, podcaster, filmmaker, audio drama creator, true crime history researcher, and an all-around extraordinaire, Cam Sully. Welcome to the podcast, sir.
Cam, welcome.
Thank you, sir. I've been awaiting the Garrett Hedlund Movie Awards. Oh, this is the wrong show for that. My bad.
Anton will sponsor that. Don't worry.
I was gonna say, where's the closest closing laundromat? Because that's where that is. Yeah.
But no, I love you guys' style. I like how you and Not a Bomb will just kind of take your take on the pre-existing factoids and rumors about the productions. You put it in your own words, just like a research paper, and then you're still having fun just kind of conjuring up, and you guys still keep us in suspense. It's like, would I recommend this movie even though I wasn't a fan of it? Is this a mild curiosity, or is this rightfully, not so underrated anymore?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Those
thank you.
kind words. Yeah, it's just, despite
It's
the
hard to do.
title, this is not a hate fest at all, this podcast.
Mhm.
Why wasn't better? That doesn't mean it wasn't inherently bad to begin with. It's like, and that's what was fun too. You were kind of starting off with a lot of material where it's like, this was talked about for like 2 weeks at the box office, and then I just have not seen anyone rent it or talk about it or bring it up.
That's one of the, I think, most interesting things when you cover older films. It's just some of them stay and become classics, and some of them just vanish. And
Some of them stay old.
often
Yeah.
there's no real explanation for it.
I had a relative, I won't say who, I love him to death, and they were complaining the other day about how this movie or show was just playing back. I'm like, well, you didn't rent the HD version. It's only looking as good as you're going to make it look. They just don't connect the dots on whatever master's been used for what you see on an HD TV versus home video. Sometimes that is unfortunately the case. Like, I think you guys might have even brought this up. Some other podcast definitely did, where you can't find a proper master of The Hitcher on some movie channels sometimes. It is interesting what stuff you might have to go to like the German or Brazilian division just to find a better copy that's the best it's looked since the drive-in days.
We didn't talk about that for The Hitcher, but we did talk about that for Munich recently, how it's just not available anywhere, ever.
Yeah.
I still don't know where I can find Dogma. So if anyone can point me in the right direction.
YouTube.
All right,
And
maybe
it's not
that's
to say you can't rent it on like Amazon or something, but
Right.
it's just there's just some movies that never show up on Netflix. They had like a weird Blu-ray release, or they weren't released on Blu-ray for a long time, etc.
And I don't know. There's some days where I'm hesitant to add stuff to my watch list. Is like, I just have a feeling this is going to be in the leaving soon within 2 months. I can only get around to so much.
Mhm.
You guys extend these deals for 2 years.
It's impossible to keep track of that either way. It's almost like month to month stuff changes on all the platforms. It's can't make head nor tail of it. But Cam, before we get into
Yes.
today's film, please, and if the listeners don't know you already, maybe they do, please tell us about what you're doing. This is your opportunity to promote, plug anything you want. I know you got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. So I'm with the Jacked Up Review Show, and we did all kinds of pop culture connoisseurs. Our goal was to basically validate everybody. It's like, if you want to ask, where did this TV show, everyone basically tuned out, if there's this movie franchise, and after sequel 3 through 7, everyone had enough of it. This is the show for you. But lately we've been doing some tie-in material. So it's like, hey, your favorite video game, it became a book series. Was it any good? Let's find out, and variations on that. We will be having a true crime and history podcast soon called 5 Puzzling Questions, which is going to be a little fun. Instead of the usual serial killer scandals, we're going to investigate some Wild West outlaws. Were they really outlaws? We'll do stuff on the lesser known Kennedys, but the best part will be when we talk about some entertainment stuff. Like, so if you want to know how many times the stock market has crashed, or some other infamous movie producers following the Canon Films doctrine, then that will be the show for you. Also working with the Movies by Minutes Collective, Cliff Stevenson of the Gonzo and Predator Movie Minute is a delight to work with. We finally met up at the Tampa convention this last year, and we decided to do 5 Minutes of Guild, which examines one of the most wonderful post-internet shows, The Guild, 5 minutes at a time.
Fantastic,
That
Cam.
is quite a bit, sir.
Do you have any recent releases that you want to get folks plugged in on?
We do a Die Hard December every year, so definitely if you want to hear some funny Joel Silver tributes, as well as some other stuff that's just kind of very laid back. We actually had a lot of fun. We got pretty woke AF on the Mr. Rogers episode, just talking about the history of the Captain Kangaroo kind of format of having us, and just we even argued, are there any other selfless hosts out there? It's kind of impossible. Almost every one of them ends up being a puppet for a corporation at some chance.
What is it? I mean, Miss Rachel's getting that Target money right now.
She's getting all kinds of money right now.
She's getting all that kinds of money, but she's not afraid to have a stance. So
all I know is my 9-month-old daughter reveres her. So
she is a god to my 10-month-old.
Yep.
So
hey,
good enough for
that's a
me.
good point. Perfect example of someone taking up their own YouTube algorithm. Yeah.
Well, Cam, we're super excited to have you today, and
Yes.
we have quite a film, don't we, Pat?
We do.
Western.
Today we're talking about a film that absolutely has endured over the years. Rio Bravo was released as a good Western. It's remembered as a great American film. The difference between those two reputations is 60 years of critics and filmmakers realizing Howard Hawks made the definitive hangout action movie, and one everyone else is still trying to imitate.
Yes.
It was released on April 4th, 1959 by Armada Productions and Warner Brothers. Directed by Howard Hawks, screenplay by Jules Furthman and Lee Brackett, based on the short story Rio Bravo by B.H. McCampbell, starring John Wayne, Dean Martin, Angie Dickinson, Ricky Nelson, Walter Brennan, and Ward Bond. The budget was $1.2 million.
Sorry?
Adjusted for inflation, that is $13 million. And the box office was $5.75 million. Adjusted for inflation, that is $64 million. It has a 96% Rotten Tomatoes score. Cam, when I sent you a list of films to choose from, what made you pick Rio Bravo?
This was going to be fun just because basically, you're going to talk about some of this in the notes, but this was going to be another movie where it's like, I myself was unsure. It's like, I had to do some extra digging. I don't know why it isn't better known, because most film buffs know about High Noon and the Akira Kurosawa films like The Hidden Fortress influence on movies like Die Hard and other Star Wars type blockbusters. And the gist of it being a response to High Noon. Just, I like kind of that political undercharge that regardless of whether you agree with the filmmaker's intent, you still got a very respectable movie in its own right.
Anton, it's high. Or were you still going, Cam? Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I was clearing my phone. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Anton, it's time we talked about John Wayne. We haven't done one of his movies yet. My dad,
Pilgrim,
really suggested to me strongly. He's like, he's one of the biggest stars of all time. All of his movies were big events back in the day. My dad is old enough to have seen a lot of this stuff in the theater. He may have seen this in the theater. He would have been a pretty young kid, but I mean, he's absolutely right. I was trying to calculate this, and I mean, it's tough, but he's certainly one of the 10 biggest movie stars of the 20th century. Arguably top 3, would you say?
Yes.
Yeah, it's no way that you can't talk about biggest stars without bringing up John Wayne and Meryl Streep.
I mean, he wasn't just a star. Like, he basically defined an entire genre. Like, when you think of Western, it's either him or Eastwood is like the first or second actor you picture, right?
Absolutely.
I think the filmmaker himself is pretty underrated. Howard Hawks. Most people.
Absolutely.
I'm
glad you mentioned him. Versatile.
Well, yeah, everything from reshoots on monster films to typical period dramas and adventure flicks. And I've seen probably more of Anthony Mann, who I also find underrated. But, if you go through just about any other big performer's resume, especially John Wayne or Bogart's, you're eventually going to see a Hawks film. But, I mean, just the original Scarface alone is probably one of his bigger ones. But considering he characterized genres and had the characters kind of matter in each of these settings, I do feel like most of the time people will just go, oh, one of the greats, but not mention a movie like what's the first 5 I would have seen by him, or you should see.
he died a long time ago, so I don't know how well known his name is to like the average moviegoer. But you're absolutely right. He's definitely underrated. Film buffs know how good he was. He's probably best known for the westerns, I would say, and maybe Scarface. But just looking at his filmography, I was just blown away. Like, he did musicals, he did stuff like Bringing Up Baby and His Girl Friday. He really could do it all. Any genre he would direct. He absolutely is one of the all-time great filmmakers.
And it's a mystery. I think it's just there's a wonderful podcast talking about a lot of these filmmakers. Shameless plug. I have nothing to do with it. God, what's their name? Damn it! It would be You Must Remember This. And lately, the host, she's been doing a wonderful, as Karina Longworth has been doing a session called "The Old Man Is Still Kicking," and she talked about everybody from Stanley Donen to Vincent Minnelli, just some of the other greats who, formatted some of the most influential musicals and war dramas. And it seems like a lot of these guys who are actually on the dollies, on the steady cams, and if anything, everyone should watch a documentary featuring these guys. Probably the best one you might know is Peter Bogdanovich did one about John Ford, and yet it seems like everyone's kind of afraid to kind of venture. They kind of like the YouTube interview summary, or just, again, like a Tarantino guy who's saying, hey, here's someone whose movie I immortalize, and it's like, okay, I'll look that up in my video store. But that's like as far as it goes nowadays. It's everyone's afraid to actually like even do a $5 Walmart aisle anymore. Take a chance.
Hawks is interesting because he's a guy who he definitely picked his own material, but he was also earlier in his career kind of a director for hire for the studios, where they probably loved him. They could kind of just throw anything at him and he would get a great result out of it.
Totally.
And Anton, he directed the original Thing.
I think that part of that is just also being on the forefront of the changing technology and being not afraid to go across different genres and really pushing out his work in that way. So, absolutely. Definitely a legend.
Rio Bravo was one of his last films. It must have had a special place in his heart because he basically remade it twice. And this is something else, another reason why I wanted to cover this particular movie is I had not seen this in quite some time, and maybe like the two of you, I had seen El Dorado, and I had definitely confused scenes between the two. So the first rewatch a couple weeks ago, I was like, wait, I thought this scene played out a different way, and then I realized I was just confusing it with El Dorado.
Same. My pod collective was the same way. We were like, hold on a second, that song you're referencing, that's not Bravo, that's El Dorado.
I was watching it for a bit, and I thought to myself, when's Davy Crockett going to be on? Man,
so
it's been a while since I've seen
when
this.
is James Caan going to impersonate a Chinese person?
Dean Martin's not in this. It's Robert Mitchum.
It's but I've never seen the other remake, Rio Lobo. That seems to be like definitely the least famous of the three.
To prep for this, I did watch that one, and I think I would have liked it better in college because I just felt so flat. I'm like, I just felt like at that point they had done the formula into death. Wayne seemed less than enthusiastic, and B-movie favorite Jorge Rivera, who's worked with the likes of Herzog, is just so intolerable in this whole movie. Like, he just thinks he's hot shit, and it's such a turnoff for even. And I try to say this delicately because I don't try to bring a modern focus to older movies. I try to look at when it was made and who it would appeal to for film connoisseurs. And God, I just threw my hands up in the air. I was like, well, this definitely would have been more fun watching this with a crew if it came on Turner Classic Movies, but it's really kind of a shame that it's Hawk's final movie. I just didn't feel like it was a good way to go out. I kind of almost secretly wish it could have been El Dorado and just kind of kept it at that, but it's not how the dominoes played out and fell.
It usually goes like that for most filmmakers, with their last film is kind of eh.
Now, riddle me this: since you guys are kind of more familiar with just kind of earlier generations and everything, have any of you ever, like on a lesser day, gotten Claude Akins mixed up with Andy Griffith? Like, he just seems to have that kind of same kind of face. I've had it a few times with some of his movie appearances.
I could see that. Yeah.
I could see that.
And so he's been a bad guy or muscle on a few of the TV shows he's guested on, and without Phil, I'd always be like, why is Andy Griffith, bashing that man's head in? Oh, wait, that's Claude Akins.
We were talking about John Wayne and how big of a star he was.
Yes.
Just because this is the nerdy stuff I do. I was trying to calculate, or who were like the biggest stars of the 20th century in no particular order. Here's the list I came up with. John Wayne, Charlie Chaplin, Humphrey Bogart, Marilyn Monroe, Cary Grant, James Stewart, Audrey Hepburn, Clint Eastwood, Sean Connery, Tom Cruise, Harrison Ford, Schwarzenegger, Clark Gable, Paul Newman, Jack Nicholson, Elizabeth Taylor, Sidney Poitier, Sophia Loren, Marlon Brando.
It's a pretty composite list. And that's just it. Like that's a good starter pack too. Like those are going to be the people who you see at a movie themed restaurant, at a museum, at a documentary on. Like those are the people who, even if you don't like them, that's who everyone in the industry wanted to be like.
Yeah, I always like to think, it's a famous list if you can totally imagine Looney Tunes making a caricature of each of these actors.
Absolutely.
Yes, great shout, Anton. That's a really good point.
I'm pretty sure you have seen all of these on Looney Tunes before.
100%.
You've definitely seen it with Chaplin and Jimmy Durante and other comedians at the time. Is like, that's even if you didn't watch a minute of these people's famous movies, is like you've seen the parodies of them in cartoons.
Right. And of course, my list, I'm not talking about their qualities as an actor, but I'm just talking straight up movie star.
Yeah.
Kirk Douglas.
Yeah, Douglas is good.
He would, I think, you could put him in as a contender there for sure.
I might put Spencer Tracy down the road, but he's going to be like number 40 in the bracket. He's not going to be like the first 10,
he's not a top seed.
I might put Gregory Peck on there mildly, but
you could put Peck on there.
Ooh, I would definitely put Gregory Peck on there.
He just had those free movies, and it's like, can't go wrong there. He really did it, but most people are going to just mention the first free, like immortalized in pop culture.
But I think what's interesting about John Wayne, and I understand his reputation now. There's been a lot of stuff written about him and published about him. There's a lot of stuff we know about his personal life right now. And Cam, you said something earlier about, like, regardless of how you feel about an actor, from everything we know about John Wayne, probably not the nicest guy. He seems like he was a pretty nasty person to a lot of individuals.
I will say
I don't want to make this podcast discussion about that. But regardless, he is unique on this list of movie stars because of how much of a box office draw he was for the length of time that he was.
Mm-hmm.
He was basically the biggest box office draw in Hollywood for almost 30 years, which is absurd to think about.
And in all fairness, for any earlier filmmaker or actor, they can be a terrible person, but as long as they're not a rapist, you're kind of good to go. So
it's kind of a shame, but you're right. That's the standard.
That is the standard.
That seems to be the standard.
I just kind of look at it as like, which ethic line can you cross? And I was actually, we were doing a tribute to Alan Rickman in one episode, and we're just like, I talked about it with this one movie. It's like, I couldn't get into this one movie this actor did because it involves, even though it's not shown in such a storyline, it would have been. So then I argued, if there was any taboo going to be busted, it would have been better if it was a love triangle or adulterer's tale. Still not great, but I can understand why you could build up some suspense versus you got a ew storyline. So I think this is it. Like, it's kind of like with a shock jock. How much filth can you handle before now you've crossed the line of no return? Now you're just a douchebag, and
it's all time relative. I mean, look, if we go to 2000, if we go to 2008 and 2007, no one's laughing at the jokes in Superbad.
No. Oh, yeah. And you guys have gotten into it with some of your other movies. It's like, we were all laughing at some of these high school movies or crime thrillers, but now that dark comedy, once you become a parent, now it's no longer funny. But once you become just more self-aware of the universe, like you say, we got to look at it the time it's made in and the pop culture relevance, which there's a bunch of here. John Wayne, I think, is a perfect example of, art separate from the artist. It's like,
yeah,
absolutely.
It's so funny how a Playboy article of all things was the one that kind of made people go, "Oh, I can't stand what my grandparents are showing me,"
It's interesting stuff.
But in all honesty, the first movie I ever saw, by him all the way through, was one of his most critically derided films. You guys could probably do, and that was The Green Berets. I fucking loved that movie growing up. Even though the telephone poles and the jingoism is on the nose. Yeah, but
that's an early one for me. I remember that one.
I just was having a lot of fun, even though for whatever reason the pro-war message just didn't get under my skin. I was just like, hey, but it is a fun kind of men on a mission movie. You just gotta.
I don't even mind the jingoism in that movie so much of just how freaking old he is.
It is that. I kind of did find it fun in a Rocky kind of way. Some geezer is leading George Takei and the troops to battle, but it is fun
George
though.
Takei, oh, I forgot he's in that. Oh
yeah.
My God.
My. Oh, people dying. Oh my. But it is fun though, seeing the helicopter shots, and you're seeing some of these telephone poles, which are clearly the middle of California, but it doesn't take me out of the movie, even though there's a glitch, if you will, stuck in the final print. But I mean, you got freaking Michael Jensen himself, the fugitive, and he's the opposing force. He goes uncredited as a protest, so but people still associate him with the movie. It's one of his best known movie outings, and so I think this movie, tonight's discussion, is a perfect pick in that we're seeing the genesis of the whole town under siege subgenre, and I did, before we get even deeper, I think what's so wild is looking at the year 1959, the movies it would have been in competition with. We got Billy Wilder's excellent Some Like It Hot. We got the mother of all epic movies, the first big epic movie and the last one nominated for best stunt work, and that is Ben-Hur, the original, from 59. We got The Nun Story, which is a melodrama by Audrey Hepburn that I do not recommend. You're just going to be laughing your head off. And then you got a divisive apocalyptic sci-fi film, The World, the Flesh, and the Devil. But those matter not. The biggest movie that would have everyone of our close to our generation would have seen a million times that year would have been North by Northwest by Hitchcock. Like that is.
I mean, I don't know, Cam. I don't think we're giving enough love to the Shaggy Dog.
Yes, Disney had to, definitely, yeah.
Disney had a very unsuccessful movie that came out that year with Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, that's right. But
initially
they're not going to
unsuccessful.
But they're not going to tell you that on the VHS in the 90s. Look at one of Disney's biggest hits. Not at the time.
Not at the time.
Not at the time on home video. So I think, I don't know if I want to get too much away. It seems like most people get distracted with the film that comes out the following year, The Magnificent Seven, as well as Clint Eastwood's, Sergio Leone's, Man with No Name themed trilogy. It seems like those are kind of, when people think of earlier Westerns, like the spaghetti Westerns, which Wayne notoriously hated despite being best friends with Clint, it seems like those were bigger. Those introduced the anti-hero or villain protagonist, that's now a staple in gangster films.
I mean, this wasn't even the only film that John Wayne did in 1959.
True.
He had a far less successful film called The Horse Soldiers, which we're going to cover, Anton, because that should have been a much bigger hit. It had him and William Holden in it, who was a major star at the time. It was directed by, I think, John Ford, and it didn't make money, which is kind of baffling. This was the more successful of the two that he did.
It's on,
but he would carry this box office success, basically up until about 1970. He had really like a couple dozen films that would have been modern day blockbusters today. That's how successful that he was. He didn't really have any long-term competition. There were actors like Gary Cooper and Clark Gable and James Stewart, of course, who were, I think, short-term competition to him at the box office, but it's the only modern day equivalent I can think of for this kind of long-term sustained success at the box office is Tom Cruise.
Totally. And kudos to him for, at this time, like, Cary Grant kind of does what modern day people like Brad Pitt and George Clooney kind of do, where he is just the charismatic star everyone wants to be at that time. Is like, ladies adore him, men want to be all the billionaire or spy type personas he plays, and Wayne is basically the second tier, definitely, where is like, I am going to do a variation of my cowboy persona in every movie, whether I'm a soldier or a granddaddy sheriff, it doesn't matter. I'm John Wayne, the cowboy, the movie star, you know. And it is interesting how he, to his credit, keeps it going. Like, even when he does movies that he absolutely would otherwise not do, but he's, you know, something's got to go in the can. So even though his cop movie outings at the end of his career aren't successful,
the Dirty Harry ripoffs.
Yeah. And it's so funny how when he gets into copycat mode, he is still trying to make everything his own. Nowadays, people like to laugh off Genghis Khan. They like to laugh off, what's the oil refinery movie? But he works with a lot of the same guys all over the place. You know, Andrew V. McFladgelin, you know, works on a lot of his stuff prior to doing the Wild Geese. So it's interesting how he is a John Ford favorite. Like, they basically do favors for each other. It's like, Ford, I need you to come on and, you know, do some pickup shots. You know, Wayne, I need you to greenlight this. I've known you since the 20s. You got to do this. You know, you got to march on to Iwo Jima with the soldiers.
So this comes out. It's Howard Hawks' first film in 4 years after the box office failure that's Land of the Pharaohs. He had taken a break from directing.
Yes.
This movie does well. It's regarded as good, but it's just kind of from all the... I read a couple contemporary reviews, you know, that were published in 1959, and they were complimentary, but they kind of more or less just describe it as like just another John Wayne Western. Like, this is entertaining, but pretty similar to what Wayne's been doing. But over the years, this has become a very well-regarded movie by a lot of filmmakers. Quentin Tarantino very famously praised it. He called it the perfect hangout movie. And you know, other filmmakers have taken influence from as well, which we'll talk about.
John Carpenter, yeah,
John Carpenter for sure. I do want to mention the fact Dean Martin being in this would have been a major deal as well.
Yeah,
you know, he probably at the time was just as famous as John Wayne, I would think.
Totally. And considering how this is a year before he starts up the Rat Pack, he's definitely on the radar. He's becoming hot shit at this point. This is before he becomes, you know...
this is before his show, right? His variety show?
I believe so. And this is interesting how he's, you know, much like Mitchum in El Dorado a few years after this, it's interesting how some of these actors, they're kind of character actors, but they slowly just have enough charm. They're able to kind of wiggle in. And if they're not part of an ensemble, then they are inevitably becoming the lead. And that's fine. Like, they're just as much a genre star as they are a lead star, which is so wild because now we like to put a label on everything nowadays. Is this person, you know, second or third tier, or are they the lead? And it's just wild how the 50s and 60s are kind of starting up. Just whoever we love, we're going to make a movie star. We are going to put them first or second on the bill, maybe third, you know, but they're on there. It's as much their movie as it is Wayne's or whichever female lead we pick. And it's interesting too how I don't really think of him as a cowboy star, but he's just so charming here. It's like, yeah, you're Dean Martin. You can do whatever you want. It's kind of that rare kind of whatever you say, it's going to land. It's going to come off the page onto the movie. I buy it.
I mentioned I hadn't seen this in a while before rewatching it. I saw this as a kid, probably on Turner Classic Movies with my dad. Anton, what is your history with Rio Bravo, if any?
So for me, I'd seen this when I was much younger, sometime on TV. And I just wanted to, but I did want to share my wife's background with this film, just to give shout out to Mrs. Pross. She grew up watching classic Hollywood films, and a lot of that influence was from her grandparents on her father's side, who, her grandpa loved John Wayne, Western films, and she's very fond of Rio Bravo, The Magnificent Seven, and just would go on and on when we were talking about this film. So, just give a shout out. She's really the one that informed me more and more about this era of Hollywood. So, I want to give the wife a shout out.
Nice,
love it.
I think it is a little more charming than most Westerns that a women audience might not care for, to be fair. Because I guess there's just enough, it's not a date movie per se, but it's like there's enough interaction between all the different leads and all the villagers.
I agree, because my wife hadn't seen this and she really enjoyed it.
But it's kind of rare.
Oh, yeah.
Like usually grandparents that you might have seen Westerns together, but they were kind of mostly just kind of guy movies of the day. But it seems like after a while, it's like movies like this kind of open up. I mean, the later John Wayne film, The Shootist, is rather similar to this, where they try to give as much screen time to all the other inhabitants as they do all the lawmen and hired guns.
I think it also just made sense for interest at like when my wife was young, just because her grandparents lived on like a few acres, they had horses, very much out in the country, and so it all kind of adds up. Like, oh, like cowboy movies, and then we go horseback riding later. Sure.
Yeah,
that doesn't sound bad at all.
I took horse riding growing up as a kid. I hated it. Didn't stop my love of the westerns. But I think it gives you an appreciation of when you see these movies and they're depicting how people hunt and cook on a farm life in between, scrubbing their leather boots and everything. It does, it in a way is almost like historical fiction. It's like my heart goes out to all those who had only their bare hands to do all this hard labor, before we had it pretty good nowadays. Like I have an electric lawnmower. These guys had to snip, the twigs and everything with just whatever metal thing they could use, to rake, whatever. They're having to be the MacGyvers of their age, where it's like their environment can be a weapon or they can use to their benefit. And I do like how there's a lot of suspense in this whole thing. Like that there's time that goes by pretty fast because it kind of shows you how it's a Western, but it's almost like it's still got kind of the mindset of a war picture at this time. Whereas like in between what would be boredom, the characters are getting to know each other, know what they're defending a little better, have kind of a what other stake do they have after this should they survive the inevitable battle. It's kind of just fun just seeing how now I can't name the last movie I've done, good or bad, where any time is given for any characters in between the next battle. It's just
let's start to break this down with the production history. But first, Anton, we have to talk about the 6 degrees of Warren Beatty's sex life, which is my theory that every film can be connected by the sexual conquests of the one and only Warren Beatty. This one's very easy, Angie Dickinson. No surprise. She was known to Mr. Beatty.
Yes.
There's also a connection from Dean Martin, who dated Anne Margaret at one point, who was known by Warren Beatty.
Well, fortunately, this was not an Ishtar level flop. So
no, it was not. No, it was not. And then this is unrelated, but I found this interesting. Ricky Nelson, who we didn't even mention yet, it would have been a big deal that he was in this at the time. He was married to Mark Harmon's sister. Small world.
Yes. Yeah, I like him in this a lot. And
he's not bad. Surprisingly not bad.
Yeah, I think a lot of these folk singers, like, since they kind of had, if not a cowboy background, just a southern upbringing, is like they were just perfect for this, because basically they're reenacting all the tales they grew up hearing family members and friends tell, but they're basically doing theater in the park, and it's captured on film. It's really fun. But I don't know if you wanted me to say is like he would have been the Justin Bieber of his age.
I wrote that down too. It would have been a big deal.
It would have been a big deal.
I don't think he had as much baggage, though.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a contemporary actor or musician that, of course, was featured in film. A lot of Disney stars nowadays, right? So
a little bit of that, yeah. As close as I can think, definitely you could probably take a country western star and who's done some movies before. So I guess, yeah, if anything, I mean, this is no different than Tim McGraw now being on one of the Yellowstone shows. It's definitely one of those country singers.
I was thinking a bit of The Weeknd in Uncut Gems, Janelle Monáe in Glass Onion, but Ricky Nelson's at the time, it is like Justin Bieber being in a movie. So as much as
I was thinking like teenage heartthrob type of singer.
Gotcha. Yeah,
because I guess he was like 18 in this, but Anton, read the production history for us.
Oh, of course. Gladly. So the film was made as a response to High Noon, which is sometimes thought to be an allegory for blacklisting in Hollywood, as well as a critique of McCarthyism. Wayne later called High Noon, quote, un-American, and said he did not regret helping run the writer, Carl Foreman, out of the country. The screenplay was co-written by Lee Brackett, who worked on the screenplay for The Empire Strikes Back.
Mm-hmm.
The story was credited to B.H. McCampbell. According to Todd McCarthy's 1997 biography, Howard Hawks, the Gray Fox of Hollywood, this was actually Hawks' eldest daughter, Barbara Hawks McCampbell. McCampbell being her married name. Her contribution was the idea of using dynamite in the final shootout.
That was a great idea.
As far as I can tell, this short story was never published, so it just seems like a story concept that they decided to credit her for.
Pretty neat.
Nepotism helps.
It always does.
It always does. Howard Hawks negotiated for Frank Sinatra to co-star as Dude before Dean Martin landed the role. Martin's agent approached Howard Hawks to consider his client for the role of the drunken deputy Dude. Hawks agreed to meet with Martin at 9:30 the next morning, and when Hawks learned that Martin had done a show in Las Vegas until midnight and hired a plane to fly him to the meeting, he was so impressed that he simply sent Martin to get a costume and told him he had the part. Principal photography lasted from May to July 1958. Interiors were shot in Burbank at the Warner Brothers studio, and exteriors for the film were shot at old Tucson studios without air conditioning. The cinematography, production design, and costumes were all designed to focus on three colors: navy blue, beige, and dark red, and it was all coordinated around those. Because the film starred a crooner, Martin, and a teen idol, Nelson, Hawks included 3 songs in the soundtrack. Pretty neat songs, I gotta say.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have something to add, Cam?
So sadly, growing up, I fell for John Wayne's bullshit. Was not a High Noon fan. I have since rectified that. I never really paid attention to him doing the whole Patriot card, but I always saw him doing the whole, yeah, that sheriff was a wimp. It's like, well, in retrospect,
he was a commie.
Yeah, it was like, I wasn't buying into any of that bullshit, but I was doing the whole, yeah, it's kind of a wimpy sheriff. It's like, no, he's a human sheriff. Gary Cooper is, the reason High Noon is one of his best roles is, he's a post-fame role for him, and he's being just a very human guy who's basically having to be a vigilante, sheriff, because he's got a town full of corruption and ineptitude, and he's having to be smarter than all the other troublemakers. But it is interesting what we're going to get into, how this is dismissed as just another John Wayne movie. This is another perfect example of kind of corporate media, where this is like, once movies kind of get in a dissing war, everyone wants to take sides on which is the better movie, when ultimately they're both their own very special formulas, and you kind of have to just take all the locker room talk out of this, if you will. You have to flush that down the toilet and just say, no, accept what's on the screen, and is it working or not? And I think both are very fine formulas. High Noon is a perfect foreshadowing of the later Unforgiven type formula, where you got a damaged individual having to just kind of wait out the various criminals he's surrounded with. And this one is kind of more just, we're gonna go get him, but it's gonna be a while.
If anyone's interested in seeing John Wayne on his soapbox, have either of you ever seen the series of commercials that he did for Ronald Reagan when Reagan was running for governor of California?
I have not.
Oh, it's so good.
It's incredible. There's like one, I'm paraphrasing a bit, Cam, but there's one where he's just like staring into the camera and he's like, what's all this talk about Ronald Reagan being just an actor? Oh, it's so great.
One of them, like the T-Zone one, but yeah.
He was president of the Screen Actors Guild. He can run a state.
The closest I've gotten is seeing all those Japanese ads with Connery and those Orson Welles being drunk.
It's fantastic.
Oh, God.
Before we start the discussion of why wasn't it better, just a quick promo break. As always, we want to thank everyone for listening. If you're liking the podcast and you haven't already done so, please follow and subscribe. We encourage you to leave comments wherever you're listening or watching. You can follow us on all the major social media platforms. Best of all, Letterboxd, where you can see our full list of films that we intend to cover. And if you really like what we are doing and you want to throw a few dollars our way, we have a Patreon. You can support the show there and get access to episodes a full week early and ad-free, plus bonus content. Links to all of the above are in the description. You guys want to take 2 really quick?
Sure. Sounds good.
Whatever works. Hey, he's back.
All right. Why wasn't it better? Number one reason, contemporary reviews versus retrospective. At the top of the episode I mentioned, gentlemen, this was like just dismissed as another John Wayne movie at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It made good money. Some reviewers thought the pacing was slow, but it grew massively over time, its reputation. What do we think of this criticism? Like why do you think this film became so well thought of all these years later? What elevates it?
Cam, be our guest.
It's definitely the suspense, but also just it's not even about the gunplay half the time. Like the kind of like a good joke, has that killer punchline. Like here we're waiting for all these shootouts, but we're getting so attached to all these village inhabitants and all these unlikely heroes, if you will. And like you're saying in some of the reviews, people are just, I think they've already had two, decades to watch John Wayne and, World War II pictures and other Western survival films. So I think at this point, they might as well have just said, he's getting up there when really he's still at the peak of his, career, and I definitely find this a more accessible movie for any generation, just because we're seeing, again, it's not just his movie, and it's also, he's not really doing that badge, showing off thing. He's kind of doing just more, just instead of his punch towards the camera or his, hands on his trousers, he's kind of doing more just kind of hanging out with everybody, just like sitting down and telling a story while he cleans out his shotgun. It's just very accessible.
There's not a lot of action in this.
Yeah.
But not to the film's detriment. I think this is not a short film. This is 220, just about. I think it's paced really well. It's not a fast-paced film, but I think it moves at a really nice rhythm. It has a really nice flow to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of fighting without fighting. And when I say fighting without fighting, I'm really referring to a lot of the dialogue moving along, and the fighting being around internal struggle, whether it's Dean Martin's character struggling with his alcoholism,
yes,
John Wayne struggling with wanting to be with this hot woman or not. But I feel like but I feel like it's a lot of that dialogue, the relationships, and that being the driving force of a lot of the film. I think you still get a lot. You still get contention, but it's not with violence and fighting. Although you do see John Wayne get punched in the beginning of the film, which interesting intro for John Wayne.
He gets knocked out a couple times in this.
That's not just another John Wayne movie. Let's be real, So I think they're just, if anything, these guys might have walked out of the theater early or been at the concession stand as it was starting, because like you don't really get this much downtime in other John Wayne movies. Like definitely from this point forward, yes, you're going to get more of him being the deputy or sheriff of a town. But here, he's kind of just the big talker. He's not really the main fighter, if you will.
He's very compassionate in this film. He wants people to be out of harm's way.
Senor Chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's not a lot of action, but Cam, you're right. There's really great sequences of suspense. There's a couple different occasions when Burdett's men are trying to get Joe Burdett, the stupider brother. They're trying to jailbreak him, and it leads to some really, I guess you could call them set pieces, but it's not dominated by action and gunplay. It's just, to your point, tension, suspense, and it's a ton of dialogue. It's a ton of just characters hanging out. The whole movie takes place on just a street, and I think basically, 3 buildings? It's basically the jail, the hotel, maybe one other building.
Totally. It's
like a saloon or two. I mean, that's it.
A 3 to 4 location movie, but mostly in one location. Yeah.
No melodrama either.
If we found any trivia that it was actually 3 different places trying to be just one, I would both believe that and say, whoa, that's a testament to filmmaking. They still made me believe that was the same exact place.
Well, Old Tucson Studios seems like a pretty cool place to visit.
Yeah.
Because it still exists. They still use it. It's basically more or less what you see in this film. They basically have this whole Western town constructed, and they can rearrange it. And it's just been used by all these different films and to great effect.
Right. And much like High Noon, like it's inevitable that one of these John Ford or Anthony Mann or Howard Hawks westerns is definitely going to get like a in frame reference. Like it's just that is so ingrained in Western culture now. So much like many movies will reference the henchman being shot off the top of the saloon in Shane, without a doubt, there's gonna be, like, I think you say, the jailbreak is definitely, I think, a key thing. If not that, or it's either that or the original Friedkin to Yuma. That someone is gonna take some scene like that, and it's like they're gonna definitely reference it in something like Tombstone or Young Guns.
And then John Wayne, he's great here. This is a super laid back. Anton, you said compassionate performance. You're right. He's not doing the one-dimensional, stereotypical "I need to be the badass at all times" character. I wouldn't say he's vulnerable in this movie, but he really is trying to play off the rest of the cast members, and I think the best way. And I think one of the reasons why this is so accessible is Rio Bravo is probably the tail end of like his physical prime.
Yep.
You know, he acted for a long time, really, until the end of his life, and he was 52 in this. He still looks pretty athletic. He's still able to pull off all the action stuff. He's more or less able to pull off the romance with Angie Dickinson. And I think this is one of the problems I have with a lot of Wayne's work, because I'm not like the biggest John Wayne fan. He's done so much material that I think like most people, you end up liking some of it and not liking a lot of it. But a lot of the stuff that he did, Cam, you were hinting at this earlier, that he would start to get into in the 70s.
Yes.
It wasn't just that he was ripping off the Dirty Harry material. He was just too old and too fat, and it just wasn't believable anymore. But he looks great here.
That's his debt. That's all he knows. You know, like many of these, former soldier turned actors, this is like, that's all he's going to do the rest of his life. But this is also a very pivotal kind of in-between segue, if you will. So, like, he's still kind of in the Man Who Shot Liberty Valance mode, I feel, where he's mentoring the secondary star. But in a way, this also kind of foreshadows his later attempt at doing romantic dramas like The Quiet Man. So, yeah, it's like he's still kind of the geezer with a set of tricks. And like you say, he's not doing the whole vulnerable, but he is being likable. He's basically the teacher who really has a lot of charm when he's not teaching, you how to be a badass. So, but this is also not a retread of either of those formulas, I would say. I'm just saying he's just doing kind of a part that's echoed from some of his earlier dual-led movies. And then as he's getting into just the period drama stuff again, where the whole point is for him to have charm with another leading lady at the time. So, yeah, it's also just kind of cool how no one really hogs their scenes. I don't ever feel like, okay, now it's Dean's movie. Now it's,
Yeah, I mean, while still seeing, fantastic moments for different actors. And I think part of that is truly no one is eating up the scene in the same way that, no one's steamrolling any of the scenes. I feel like all of the actors are really complementing each other well with their chemistry.
Yes. And it's so funny, though. I did not know about this is post Jerry Lewis breakup for Dean, and it was either him or Sinatra, and Sinatra bailed. So, okay, Dean, you get the part. They still kind of do a bit of that in Hollywood, but they like to have it on the hush-hush spectrum, because then it gives... In this day, it was just talk of the town. Now, if you do that nowadays, people remember you for it. It's like, oh, man, you avoided a doozy. Oh, you flaked out on a movie that could have won you an Oscar. People like to do that kind of smack talk now. Now it's just like, but this is what they were doing. Kind of like how certain people measured up with the Little Rascals at the time based on, who was just getting more screen time. It's kind of what it is here with the Rat Pack as they're starting, is like who gets what role in which movie.
Yeah, for sure. And Anton, I agree with you that it really is a true ensemble piece. And that's probably a testament to not only Howard Hawks directing, but I think the screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a ton about the development of the script for this film, but I think I would not be surprised to learn that the script was very solid. I think all the dialogue is great, but all the characters get room to breathe. And both of you kind of said this a bit earlier. Wayne is not trying to play hero ball here. He's not trying to dominate scenes like he does in a lot of other films, where you can tell maybe didn't have faith in the script or the director, and he's like, well, I'll just try to talk over everybody else. You don't see that at all here. He really is playing off of everybody else, and
it's a good John Wayne.
You can tell. I don't know if it's a good John Wayne. It's all right. And this film does set itself apart from a lot of others that I've seen from this era, because right around the time I watched this the first time a few weeks ago to prep for this, I watched his other film from 1959, The Horse Feathers. It's a mess, and it shouldn't have been, because it's him and William Holden sharing a lot of scenes, but they don't have nearly the chemistry that he does with the cast in this.
Yeah. And in all fairness, William Holden, same kind of actor where I gotta be the main guy or I'm gonna box your face in, So I guess these guys were just chill enough. They're kind of, Dean is not only just kind of an example of just a cool individual on and off screen, but also just he looks like an everyday man. So I think because he's kind of knows how to balance out party animal with professionalism, I think that's just why it's so beneficial here. It would have probably only been drastic if this was just another case of like John Wayne not trusting the director and basically having to tell people to get their shit together. I don't think it was that kind of set. And so that might have been also just kind of because it just definitely feels like it must have been a fun time filming for it to just come off this awesome,
Yeah, I heard a Q&A with Angie Dickinson on YouTube that she did kind of recently. By the way, she's still with us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
probably the only surviving cast member. She has to be. And she was talking about that, how the whole experience of filming this was great and very relaxed, and everyone was getting along. You can tell.
That's good. I mean, definitely a highlight for her career. I think she has enough to do. Kind of just play off the two other leads.
Well, let's talk about the rest of the cast then.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
We were starting to get into Dean Martin. This is probably the best performance I've ever seen from him. He's fantastic in this. Really believable as an alcoholic.
And you guys covered, Airport previously.
He was definitely drinking on set. That's for sure.
Yeah,
sweating.
And it just seems natural as opposed to, man, we got to cut and apply makeup and wipe the actor's face. It's just like I can only imagine if it wasn't just the California heat. You also got to realize, all that the lighting and gaffing at the time.
By the way, thank you for acknowledging Airport.
Oh, you guys had a lot of fun just talking about just the evolution of disaster movies and how they're not all just trash.
No.
Mm-mm.
Love the Airport series.
Yep.
Anton's resistant to cover the sequels. Don't think I don't remember that, Anton.
Well,
then
I remembered there was a plane under sea.
That's the most fun one, Airport 77.
Right.
Yeah, that's James Stewart's plane.
Yeah.
Jack Lemmon's the captain. Come on, Christopher Lee.
Well, and that's the thing with horror movies. Everyone wants to check out a slasher, good or bad, and it makes for fun conversation. Same thing with action movies. Is like in sci-fi stuff. Is like when you visit a disaster movie, you just never know if it's going to turn out until the end.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like them so much. They kill off characters like a slasher movie. You really don't know. Like Poseidon Adventure is basically a horror movie.
Yep, you guys hit it on that pretty good. But it's even more fun. Just you don't know if it's going to work or not, because sometimes these movies still work, even though they had some unforgivable sins in their story structure or effects, or they didn't deliver exactly what you wanted to see. But there's still some good stuff in them. This Western movie kind of takes us, dare I say, a similar approach with everything's going to hell, handbasket, will our heroes, save the town or not? But it's taking its time, and like you guys said, I still can't believe that a movie like this, it doesn't feel dreadfully overlong or anything. It's like it's just right.
Yeah, there's a lot of this that reminds me of one of my favorite anime. Ooh, interesting segue. Have you guys seen? I mean, Pat, I'm pretty sure you've seen Cowboy Bebop.
I was just about to say,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be sure. I mean, of course, Westerns have a huge influence on that series, but some of my favorite episodes of that show was you have this sense of rounded optimism that the characters were going to turn out okay. But a lot of the episode focus, of course, is just internal struggle. But then each character kind of bringing each other out of this hole or trying to push each other, sharing little moments that let you get a glimpse of who the character is on the inside without outwardly saying it in any dialogue. And for this film, I see a lot of that reflected. And I definitely have to give that shout out to each character or each actor, for putting that on screen. So I definitely invite listeners, if they haven't watched the original Cowboy Bebop, you'll see a lot of Western references on that show.
Well, and that's a perfect example of just like a more mainstream like Western. Most people go to it because it's a good anime, but it's also something more. Like it's just we like the characters. It just happens to have a Western setting.
You're right, Anton, about the sense of like optimism. Like this film has that. You never. This very easily could have been a very like nihilistic, almost like not film noir, but it could have been very cynical. Yeah.
Different tone. This could have been like, oh man, they're like headed to their doom.
I guess the example of that we're talking about would be like the John Carpenter pseudo remake of this Assault on Precinct 13, where it's
much
really dark.
film.
Yeah, different kind of film.
That's him having fun versus, that's more of a college crowd movie versus this is a family time movie that you can still watch with anyone, anywhere, in any kind of dorm.
Right. Plus, you had, the Hays Code was still in effect in 1959.
Yeah, we're not gonna. This does not open up with a kid getting killed.
But I think in some ways, though, that's one of the best things about this with the cast, because I don't feel like this has any corny restrictions around it like a lot of 50s films do. The dialogue was really snappy, really clever. It felt really modern. And again, I think it's just a testament to Howard Hawks and the screenwriters. They handle the alcoholism in a way that I don't think a lot of films in the 50s would have. I'm not going to say this film handles Dean Martin's character's alcoholism like a modern film, but it does not feel like a film from 1959. It seems to handle his character in a very mature way, other than the fact that which I thought was funny, how his character is an alcoholic and Sheriff Chance's solution is like, just drink a bunch of 40-ounce beers.
Yeah. I wonder how much of that was the screenplay versus any ad-libbing that might have inevitably happened with Wayne's persona and Hawks's influence. But like you say, it doesn't really, it's a little progressive, if anything, is like you can do options. You don't have to do just that, you can, this won't make the steps go away, but you can find something that will, affect your liver less,
By this point, and I just definitely wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this. There's about what, like, Westerns have been the main, like the key genre for like what, like over 20 years at this point.
Yeah.
It still had like another like solid 15-20 years of like big films and big stars being attached to Westerns. Do you feel like there was maybe some fatigue going into this for the audience?
Possibly. I mean, it's the only other reason we can think of, other than the other movies that we talked about that had influenced 20 years later, let alone some of the other Westerns that Clint's doing. It seemed, let alone Seven Samurai, it seems like the stuff it's surrounded by is bigger. I think that's just it. I think everyone seems to associate this with John Wayne's jealousy by not being as the hottest guy on the block right now. I think that's what it's kind of setting into. But even though the movie is quite masterful, I mean, this has an 8 out of 10 on IMDb as we speak, and it's not in the top 250. So I thought every movie that had that rating instantly qualified.
Yeah, so I didn't even realize that. That's a great rating.
Yeah. So I mean,
I don't know.
It is liked, but I guess just not enough. Like people are more likely to go to the first 5 things that were in the well.
You might have been right, Anton, about the fatigue, although I mean it would certainly be the dominant genre for, I mean, really until about 1970 is when it started to flip, I think, a little bit. But Wayne, he had actually had a few films before this that hadn't done that well, so he kind of needed this to be a hit. And certainly audiences back then would have expected Westerns from him.
Yeah, a particular kind of Western. So it really, I think that just even adds more fuel to the fire of just, your take there, Pat, of he knew what kind of role he wanted to portray with this particular role.
I mean, if I were to search for John Wayne now, even more mysteriously, this is just not going to be one of the ones that comes up right away. I usually get stuff like The Undefeated, The Searchers, True Grit, and its sequel. You know,
Yeah, The
In
Quiet
Harm's
Man.
Way. The Quiet Man, In Harm's Way, all the John Ford movies, you know, that you may or may not care for, you know, Katie Elder, and Rio Bravo is like the 8th one that pops up. I'm like, I would still put this as like number 3, probably, you know.
It might be my number 1. I think I might like this more than High Noon. I think it's more fun than High Noon.
No, that's a good point, because High Noon's kind of, yeah, it's kind of more like Unforgiven, where it's anti-violence and a person with ethics, you know, mixed in with action and bursts. And I think that's why I was disappointed growing up, because, you know, people would make fun of the climax of High Noon, even though that is far from what the commentary is actually in the movie, you know, growing up. But because it's kind of like any movie that's parodied, when everyone remembers the violent ending, you can't help but feel a little underwhelmed, because you're just expecting a bloodbath, unfortunately. And I do like Wayne and some of his other ensembles, like The Longest Day and The Wings of Angels. But yeah, he's kind of brings his rare, even though he's always a variation of himself, he kind of brings his war ensemble, like some of those elements, into this Western, I feel. And I feel like that is why it's a little more just fun. In between the excitement, like you say, it's still getting to know these individuals and how long they've known each other and why they'll probably get to know each other once the credits roll.
Angie Dickinson in this.
Mm-hmm.
What do we think?
Smoke show.
Yeah, I thought she was fine. You guys not really digging her as much. I thought she was fine.
No, I like her. I like her here. I wouldn't say she's the best actor.
Mm-hmm.
She's trying. She's really throwing herself at John Wayne.
Yeah, their scene together where she's changing behind the folded
Screen.
partition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just I thought that was fun, quippy dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Great dialogue together. All the characters have great dialogue together. But yeah, I like her character in this. She's basically the comedic relief. Her and Stumpy, played by
with
Walter
a name like
Brennan.
Stumpy.
Stumpy, you know you're getting comedic relief. Her name's Feathers, which is like equally funny. She doesn't even really get her real name.
It's either that or horse feathers, I guess. Yeah.
But the strength of this movie really is in the cast, the camaraderie. Stumpy is another character. He could have been a terrible character, and he ends up not being.
Not her first time being in a Western. Yeah, she's done their stuff like Man with a Gun, Tension at Table Rock. And later does the disastrous Marlon Brando Chase, which has been critically reevaluated. So
yeah, he was in a lot of that types of roles.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, I want to shout out Ward Bond, who was in like 20-something films with John Wayne. He plays, why am I drawing a blank?
That guy.
He plays Pat Wheeler, who, he gets killed about halfway through the film. But this was his final appearance with John Wayne. He died shortly after this film came out.
So wild. But
yeah, he was in a lot of stuff with Wayne.
Mm-hmm. Looking at his credits, for anyone who might know, I mean, you'll have everything from Free Godfathers to They Were Expendable to appearances on Wagon Train. So definitely a genre actor who's getting comfy with his friends.
Yeah, the whole cast in this film, I noticed this on like the third rewatch. Everyone has an arc. It's really satisfying. Even Stumpy.
Of course, can't leave out Stumpy.
Yeah, you can't leave out Stumpy. They try to leave out Stumpy at the end, but Stumpy shows up. Starts chucking dynamite around.
You thought they were going to stump him.
Nope. No, sir. Can't stump the Stumpy.
But yeah, everybody has somewhat of an arc. It's really satisfying. Again, strength of the screenplay.
Takes its time, but it's also, like you say, it doesn't feel overindulgent. It's just like, yeah, we're going to get to know these guys, and we're going to hint at action before we finally have any kind of action, and that's okay. Not bored sitting here getting to know these individuals.
Ricky Nelson, pretty good.
I don't feel like he's playing towards the camera. It doesn't get, because you do kind of see that with some of those singers of this day and age, where they feel like they've just walked off like the Ed Sullivan Show, giving a performance.
Hawks didn't want to cast him. He thought he was too young. He was too lightweight. He gave him the fewest number of lines possible. His first choice was Elvis, who demanded too much money. I mean, that would have been just immediately a different movie with Elvis in it.
Yeah, because then you got a persona that's bigger than the movie, and then Wayne would have probably been jealous and been like, I need more me time, so then you would have had a cluster. I think we just avoided it.
Hawks later admitted having Nelson's name on the poster probably added $2 million to the box office.
So there you go. Yeah, it's kind of like you get with some of today's directors are still doing this. They're having to trust the pop singer. Can they do the work? Are they going to be a hassle to work with? Am I going to have to baby them? And I don't think this was the case. Yeah, he got along with them.
No, he doesn't overdo anything. He doesn't overact. Plays it pretty straight. I mean, I wrote down this has got to be John Wayne's best ensemble, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Totally.
Cam, you mentioned The Longest Day, which is a far better ensemble, but that's not a John Wayne movie.
Well, right. It's a war picture that he happens to be third billed on. That's it.
It's a film we're going to cover at some point.
I'd love to hear you guys' take on that.
It's
and A Bridge Too
movie.
Far. Yeah.
A Bridge Too Far is a messier version of that, I would say.
In a good way.
I like A Bridge Too Far, but it's flawed. Incredible use of British people in that film, Anton.
Yes. Good old Brits.
It might be the most British movie ever made.
Maybe that's the thing. Maybe because there were no British people in this movie, it wasn't messy shoot.
You might be onto something there.
Because you know how John Wayne was. Just like, everyone's trying to.
I won't allow them in here.
One of the environments trying
After
to take
we
back my
already
moves.
beat their asses in 1776.
I think that's what it is. I almost get the sense that John Wayne is a method actor. He was the sheriff on every movie.
He takes credit for the American Revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely method acted Genghis Khan. So
And he got
We
cancer
are
for it. So,
absolutely going to cover that film.
And the fact that so many people just for years were like, I wonder why everyone's getting sick. I'm like, you're in the desert where they do radiation,
my
and
goodness.
bomb testing. Why wouldn't you get sick?
Some great lines in this film. I wrote a couple of them down.
Yes.
My wife really liked the line, "You look like the cat who swallowed the chicken."
It's still just perfect. However you say it, doesn't matter. It says what it's saying.
And then Wayne says to Dean Martin, "You invented the hangover." And he responds, "I could sure take out a patent for this one."
It's just good dry delivery. So I guess maybe while we were joking earlier, that might be why people like to sarcastically call it a dad movie. It has just that kind of snarkiness, 50s
The dryness.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no profanity because you weren't going to get that in 1959. But the
No.
film doesn't need it. It's just fun.
It is so funny though how when I go back to friends and family who loved his award-winning role in True Grit and how it, want to talk Hays Codes, it was a big deal that someone said, I'm gonna take out those sons of bitches,
Mm-hmm.
and he was one of the first guys to kind of do that. It's like
the Duke cursed,
right. It's like, and it's so funny though how he was kind of one of the many guys who's an indirect pioneer of that whole is like, we get offended by cursing, but not when it's someone we like saying it, with intent. So now, unfortunately, this is a movie where it could have been any other star taking way too much credit for when it is really just a movie that elevates above workmanship. Is like everybody got the memo, everybody did their part, everybody made sure it was a good production and turnout. I mean, they shot it probably no different than all the other Westerns, good or bad, but again, like you say, the devil is in the detail when it comes to the script. Like the characters just have enough charm to play off to where you would have had to been a really bad actor or just uncommitted to just really wreck it, or there would have had to been like some of the other movies we all read up on later where the two leads hated each other, but editing was able to work around their animosity offset, so I think it's both a competent production and it's also just it lucked out. It could have easily gone sideways at any point, but fortunately that was not how it turned out.
What's our favorite scene?
I could probably pick a few mild scenes just with Dean, just when he's evolving. There's definitely one scene where he's in the bar cabinet, I think, and he just has just kind of a cool a few other just reminiscing just about life in general that I find just very appealing and again rare for this kind of Western picture.
When Dean sees the blood in the drink, and he says, "I guess I'll have that drink now."
Oh yeah,
That has to be it for me.
Yeah, that was gonna be my pick. Great
really
tension because you're like, man, is he gonna mess this up? Like,
it's like, oh my god.
Oh, that's just it, and it is just as time has shown, time and again, with every kind of novel, every kind of movie, even a show, we like following characters who are a danger to themselves, if not others. You know, it's just it's a good script building. It's like, will they be the same person by movies in, or will they be the same problematic person who just can't kick the bottle?
Yeah, which is why I think the optimism in this film and the character that John Wayne was in this film, he really did believe like this is gonna move in the right direction. He's gonna, like, Dean Martin's gonna get out of it. John Wayne is here to really help steer people the right way. There's an optimism that they're gonna get out of this okay, and but it doesn't feel overly heavy on like, or heavy-handed in that same way.
It's not being an unneeded melodrama, and at the same time, whether Wayne or the script knows it or not, it's helpful that he could have easily just been a smartass, and Dean is the butt of all of the jokes made at his expense. But instead, it's kind of more of a, you don't really want to do that. Like, they just kind of do little small blurbs here and there. And finally, he kind of gets the memo. Is like, okay, I gotta, worry about doing my job and defending this place instead of, catering to my vice.
My pick was going to be the scene you mentioned, Anton, and then the scene a little bit later on where Burdett's men knock out dude, take his clothes, and they are riding up the street and they surprise Chance, and they're like, you're gonna go to the jail and you're gonna let Joe out. And
yeah,
Wayne's character Chance, he has no options, and the only way he gets out of it is because of the intervention of Ricky Nelson's character Colorado and Angie Dickens' character, because it's like a real true ensemble. He's the hero of the film, but he has to rely on the ensemble to get him out of a jam. It's kind of atypical for a John Wayne role,
which is just so surprising when you go back to all the smack talking he's doing about considering all these other Westerns at the time being weak. It's like, well, but you're doing the same thing where you got to surrender briefly before, hitting the bad guys back later in the movie. It's like, well, I think John Wayne is a perfect example of, if it comes from someone he likes, he's okay with it. If it's from someone he doesn't like, then he talks shit.
Yep, that's
as long as they're not a commie.
Yeah, if you're a pilgrim. So, and I think that's just it. I think people are hesitant to. I think we might have solved it. Is like, if people already, especially the modern day, aren't familiar or crazy about John Wayne, they might be hesitant. And so I think we can go back to the Steven Seagal episodes on this, where you should still see this just because this is a good movie first, regardless of who stars in it.
Yeah, I mean, like, the plot of this, everything just kind of flows into the next scene. Like, every scene just flows into the next scene. There's no real holes in the plot that I could discern. I mean, the plot is extremely basic, which is totally fine. It just, it has a real nice rhythm to it. Is there anything you think that could have improved this? Because all three of us are obviously high on this film.
Yeah, we talked about it before the recording, Pat. It's just baddies are a little one-dimensional, or you don't really know too much of their motivation.
Yeah, and like you say, usually that's, that's usually a nail in a coffin. But I think because the villains, they're not memorable, but they're also not lame. They're kind of just there. And it's like, but unfortunately they do blend together. So yeah, it would have been, I guess, better if one of them had been kind of one of the Hellraisers, like just set some stuff on fire or something, just had a smirking grin.
I think what this film did really well, though, in defense of why not go deeper into like the villain's story arc or their true motivation, I think it just did a great job of showing how these guys are jerks.
Right.
Whether it's how they treat Dean Martin's character, any dialogue that they have with Senor Chance. I think it's just enough that like everyone universally just doesn't like jerks, and these guys are jerks.
Right. They kind of take a high school movie format, but here in 50s standards, where it's like we're all teaming up and by movie's end, we will have defeated the bullies or told them to get lost. It's just, but like you say, it could have easily broken the movie. There might have been one extra dramatic scene where the music might have gone into a different tempo, bam, 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 and I think, unfortunately, I have seen this often with Westerns where especially with some of today's Western movies that have come out in recent years that have done throwbacks. There was this one with Mads Mikkelsen, for instance, from 2014, that called The Salvation. And I could not stand that movie because so much screen time was given to the villain and we never find out why they're evil. And so it undid the otherwise pleasant cat and mouse action and acting because the villain just was kind of playing towards the camera, and I don't know, no time is spent why they're doing all this horrendous stuff, setting people on fire. So this could have easily, obviously they weren't going to do this with Hays Codes, but it could, I kind of noticed a similar thing with John Wayne movies. When they focus on the villains too long, they can also be dreary. Like, you see this with True Grit, for instance. You get to know both the kidnappers and, the merc hired to, retrieve the kidnappee. Equal screen time. Didn't work so well with Rooster Cogburn, where the villains are just lame, just robbing and kidnapping. And again, since you've spent too much time on the villains, you now got to give the Duke his screen time that he requires. So then it becomes an uneven standard. So I think this was just at the tip of the iceberg. Wayne was just, he had the ego, but he was going to trust Howard Hawks like he trusted John Ford. It's like, you do whatever you feel is right. I'll bring it to life, before he inevitably, gets to the late 60s and 70s and does the whole, whatever happens, I matter most, So it's just a diamond in the rough where, like you say, the villains are like the only weak spot, but because the characters carried the movie, we're okay with that kind of just being, seen past. But now, in a way, I do kind of feel like we're playing with fire. If we add villains, do they impact the movie or make it dreary?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know the villains were as lacking as I was thinking about now, because they're not stereotypically cartoonishly evil in this film, which I actually kind of appreciate. Like Joe Burdett, whose actions, whose murder of some basically bystander is what triggers this film's plot. He obviously seems like a real scumbag because he murdered someone in cold blood. His brother, Nathan, who's like basically, we don't even really know what he is. He's like a local wealthy landowner, rancher, baron type of individual. He obviously hires a bunch of cowboys to try to spring his brother from prison. But I noticed like they don't treat him like a particularly evil character. He just basically seems like a ruthless businessman. When they're trying to spring his brother from jail, he has explicit orders like, I don't want the sheriff killed. I don't want anybody to get killed. Just get my brother out of jail. And
right.
I kind of appreciated that about his character, even though he doesn't get much screen time.
Like you say, like it's fine, but it could be way better. So
yeah, the actor who plays him, he's fine. I wonder, like, would it have been better if it was Jack Palance or Eli Wallach or Liev Van Cleef? Maybe.
And there's definitely no shortage of many other Westerns, without fail. Almost all of them. If it's not a crooked sheriff or bandit taking over the town, it almost always ends up being a land baron who wants more than just the land he owns, overstepping. And it's kind of one of those where, not to get into conspiratorial, it's just a good, money tends to be the root of all evil. And it's just great for a movie. But unfortunately, when it is a movie, we just need something more than just, I'm just evil or I'm greedy and want more, So, yeah. But like you say, so maybe I guess to improve it, we could have had just a little, maybe a follow-up line to, no sheriff getting killed. It's like, well, just maybe explain a little, like, just because like Fruitenda Yuma did it so well with the original, that just, here's the unlikely ally, and here's the, hero who's going to bring in the outlaw, and here's our code where we're going to try to, defeat one another without actually killing each other. And so, yeah, maybe a little just some other henchmen just kind of reiterating their boss's orders might have been cool, instead of just have them all be stormtroopers, lining up.
So we have to start to wrap things up. Anton has to go.
Yes.
I want to give a quick shout out to the score composed by Dmitry Tiomkin. I thought it was great. I love that cutthroat song that plays throughout the film. Very effective.
Yes.
Anything to add before we give our ratings?
Everyone should see it.
Yep.
Well, Cam, then, as you're the guest, would you like to go first and give yours?
I'm going to give this a solid B-, because because like you say, it ticks off just about everything you want from just some, and it's just a more accessible Western from this time period in film history, and it's just a crowd pleaser. And by today's standards, it's definitely even more accessible because you can kind of see how some of the marketing and the movie magic that you see in some of today's movies referenced here. Obviously, all the people we mentioned at the start who have remade it a dozen times, it'll be fun on that thing, but it is more than just a curious look. It really is just how to get it done effectively without the stars, overshadowing or causing mischief on set. It just as a miracle, and just as a highlight for Howard Hawks' resume, is definitely a must see.
Anton?
I've said this in conversation with Pat, and I'm going to start out by saying Westerns are not my favorite genre. But with that, I will say that there are many films in this genre that I've seen that I think are remarkable films.
Mm-hmm.
And Rio Bravo is absolutely on that list. I think that, having seen other films with John Wayne, but particularly seeing this ensemble film, it's what I really enjoy about film in general. It's a character piece. It's looking at beyond what is the stereotypes and the tropes of the genre, as well as a really fun ride. And I think that it's a bit atypical for a Western as well. And all of those things considered in the quality of the film, especially from an era where the pacing, from an era where people may say they may not have the patience for a film like this, but just watching it, over 2-hour film, it really is very easy to watch.
Yeah.
I think that there's so much here that I really do appreciate, and one that I highly recommend. The music in the film too, I'm a big fan, and I think it's for a lot of folks that nowadays may not even appreciate the Western era of film. Like, you absolutely have to see Rio Bravo, especially if maybe you've only heard of John Wayne just because you've been to the airport in SoCal.
Yes.
Yeah, I give this one a B+.
This was such a pleasant surprise for me to rewatch. I hadn't seen this in a long time. I'm glad we picked this for our first John Wayne outing. This is easily my favorite of his films that I've seen in as long as I can remember. I think he's great in it. The rest of the cast are equally great. They complement him well. It's not a short film, but I think it's paced really well. It's a very laid-back, leisurely kind of movie, which I really appreciate. I mean, to call it a hangout movie is correct, and it is the best kind of a hangout movie. I give this an A. I was really impressed by this. This has become kind of a favorite of mine. I would definitely revisit this. And to both of your points, if anyone of the listeners haven't seen this and they're not sure about John Wayne, this is a great place to start. Well, Cam, absolute pleasure having you on. This was a great first outing.
It's great to kind of challenge ourselves on, genres that might not necessarily be, just the first one we want to go and seek out. It's kind of like when you don't like a certain kind of band, it's like, well, listen to a different kind of music in that genre, like see someone who did it better.
Cam, you're a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's so much fun having you on.
I think you led the way on the Ricky Nelson trivia. That was awesome.
Good old Ricky Nelson. We probably won't be talking about him much more on this podcast. This might be a first, and last. But yeah, Cam, it's been a pleasure. We'll have you back if you want,
and vice versa.
Yeah, we'll have to be on your show soon. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Yes. Safe out there.